On the 26th of December, 1983, Mao Zedong was born. Mao was born during the Qing dynasty in a village in Henan. His father, Mao Yichan, was one of the wealthiest farmers in the town, and so Mao would often spend his days working on the farm. During this time in his formative years, he read a lot. The more he read, the more he found himself learning about politics and economics, often reading translated copies of works by Adam Smith, Montesquieu, and others. Mao also found that he did not enjoy reading books influenced by Confucianism, which is part of the reason he often spent his time focused on Western literature. Mao's father was often a very strict man, and Mao often had conflicts with him. But one of the most well-known happened when he was 13. His father attempted to arrange a marriage with Liu Yiqiu, a 17-year-old woman whose family was also a large landowner. This marriage would allow the land owned by the two families to merge and create even more of a profit with their crops. Mao refused this marriage almost immediately and moved away for a short time to prevent this. After a period of his life involving war and revolution, which ultimately led to the creation of the Republic of China, Mao finally completed his education. After this, he moved to Beijing and worked as a library assistant at Peking University. During his time there, he learned of the growing movement. One of equality, one of fairness, one of Russia.
Ugh, it was communist revolution.
In 1921, Mao was one of the first members of the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, and he slowly grew in rank to gain more power. Now, at this time, there were two political parties in China, the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party. Despite the Communist Party's growing numbers, the Nationalist Party continued to hold power. The two did cooperate though for a time, and there was peace. That was, however, until Sun Yat-sen, the leader of the Nationalist Party, decided to fucking die in March of 1925. What followed was a great civil war. And although I'd love to give a detailed animation showing the war and Mao's strategies of guerrilla warfare, I think I'd kill myself animating that. Isn't that right, Case, who's animating this? See, I thought so. So let's just skip to the good part. Communism won! Yippee! And then Mao killed over 40 million people due to poor planning and bad infrastructure. Now, obviously, Mao's life was a pretty mixed bag, 7 out of 10 in my book. However, there is one amazing thing created by his existence, and that was the game of Mao. The game of Mao has a really simple base set of rules that are almost identical to Uno. You're dealt X number of cards and trying to get rid of all of them. You do this via playing cards of the same suit on top of each other or rank. But it's not the reason this game is enjoyable. Anyone who knows how to play Mao has their own set of house rules, which usually vary completely from each other. In my house, if you play a card with a spade, then you must yell spades, otherwise you're gonna be forced to draw a card. But the fun doesn't stop there. Someone calls you out on not following a rule, you must sincerely thank them for the blessing of gifting you the cards. Otherwise, you're forced to grab another. Mao is obviously most fun when you play with a group of people who don't know the game. Is when you start a game of Mao, you are required by law to tell them that you cannot explain the rules. The core fun of the game, obviously, is bullying your victims if you created or know of the rule set. And if you are one of the victims, it's so satisfying to be able to catch your torturer forgetting a rule and making them draw a card. So, all of this card game stuff is fun and all, but why do I bring it up? You saw the title, you know this video isn't about Mao Zedong. Well, it's all because of this concept of house rules. House rules are your way of making the game cater to whatever your needs are. Are you playing with a child? Then lower the starting hand so they have less numbers to think about. Teaching someone a game for the first time? Have them show their hand so you can coach them through the game. Got a group of overconfident friends who are in over their heads? Throw more +4s into the Uno deck. It literally doesn't matter. Play the game the way you want to play it. And while all that's well and good, how does that work in video games? In video games, you can't just make Mario jump higher because you want to. You're not able to go through the game's code to modify it. You can only do exactly what the developer allows you to do, things they specifically programmed. And the thing is, all this makes me wonder, when should a video game cater to the player's preferences? In other words, how do we make a game accessible to all players? And I think I have the answer. According to Merriam-Webster, accessibility is defined as being capable of being reached, understood, and appreciated. And, this makes a lot of sense, especially in today's discussion. However, I do want to make one very important distinction, because I understand that the title of the video is slightly misleading. I am not talking about how games are developed to handle disabilities. It's a whole different can of worms, and I'm not disabled. Rather, I'm discussing how games reach different types of players. But how do we make a game accessible to all players in the first place? Well, I think one of the finest examples is with Marvel Rivals is a game I bet you've heard of. The basic idea of a hero shooter is obviously with the heroes, and boy does Marvel Rivals have a lot of them. Each hero is put into one of 3 classifications. You either do damage, take damage, or reverse damage. However, each hero is way more than that. None of them are built the same. Take Moon Knight for example. Moon Knight's whole stick is that he's hiding in the shadows. He has this thing called an Ankh that will literally do aimbot if you hit it while enemies are nearby. However, the enemy team can still take the Ankh out. This basically means you have to get close, but not too close, and manage your resources. Moon Knight is a hero built on tactical positioning and can put a lot of pressure on the opposing team if they aren't careful. Another hero in Marvel Rivals is Black Panther, who works completely differently. His entire design is to flank people and direct combos. His tools, if used in the correct order, can allow other moves to be used and instantly come back without a cooldown. Meaning, if you can nail a combo while flanking the enemy team, you can completely decimate the support and damage dealers, giving your team time to cause a team wipe. Okay, so we've talked about 2 different heroes. Well, why? Here's the mind-blowing part though. Both of these heroes are a part of the damage-dealing classification, and these 2 aren't the only characters that are completely different. Practically every hero has completely different toolkits, playstyles, and core design ideas. This, in my opinion, is why hero shooters work, and why Marvel Rivals works especially well. You could be someone who likes getting real close to people. Well, may I introduce the Hulk? You could be someone who can't aim for shit. Hello? Scarlet Witch? It's beautiful! No matter who you are, there is a character for you. Other games have similar ideas to this too. Elden Ring has over... Wait, am I reading that right? Really? Over 40 weapon types, which is fucking ridiculous if you ask me. But they have that many, so your character can literally have any build imaginable within the bounds of the game. You know how many 40 types is? Well, here they are! Achoo! I spent a lot of time on those. Another game that takes this idea of incorporating different playstyles is one of my favorite indie games of all time, Moonlighter. Similar to Elden Ring, it has a bunch of weapon types, but this isn't why I'm bringing it up. See, Moonlighter is a shopkeeping roguelike, which basically means you go into these dungeons to collect loot. The dungeons require a lot of item management, and going through them is really cool. But then, all that loot you collected is taken back with you to your shop, which you then sell. A lot of the shopkeeping mechanics are very simple, just waiting for NPCs to buy your stuff and then pressing A to check them out. However, you have to set your own prices, which adds a whole new level of strategy, turning the game almost into a puzzle to figure out how much you can use the greed of capitalism to purge out the wealth from your patrons' coffers. And then, thieves and other things will start appearing in your shop as well to take your attention away from manning the counter. And if people wait in line too long, they will just steal the stuff and you will lose money. I fucking love these mechanics. However, I can see why others wouldn't. Fortunately, Digital Sun, the development team behind Moonlighter, offered a solution. At around the halfway point of your playthrough, you unlock a shop upgrade that gives you the Assistant. She will then sell all your items in a specific chest while taking a 30% commission. And I think this is an amazing solution to this problem. Sure, you do still have to work for a little bit in order to get there, but it's not like it takes forever. Most people will probably get the upgrade within 3 to 5 hours. What I like the most about this, though, is that there's a trade-off. Sure, you don't have to keep interacting with one of the core parts of the game, but you do lose a 30% cut of the potential money you could gain. In my opinion, this is the best way to let a player choose to ignore a mechanic. Sure, there's a price, but if the player really doesn't like the mechanic, then he'll take this. A game that does not use this idea very well is Paper Mario: The Origami King. The ring combat mechanic in this game has been heavily discussed and disliked. For those who aren't in the know, basically every time you get into a fight, you have to solve a puzzle by lining enemies up in a limited number of moves and times. This is not good. It's such a strange battle mechanic that makes battles take forever and makes me actively want to avoid battles since there's no XP offered to incentivize it. However, when I am forced into a battle, the developers have offered a solution. See the toads up there? Oh, you do? Give them money. Simply throw the toads gold and they'll solve the puzzle for you like the greedy bastards they are. Well, it's not so bad. I can just ignore the game mechanic, but then I lose all my hard-earned moolah. Problem solved, right? No. Money is super easy to get in this game, and so you're gonna have a large surplus. So throw as much money at the toads as you please.
Hello!
Mario, not that much! Mario, not that much! No! Although this list isn't comprehensive by any means, I would be remiss not to mention The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I mean, this game was a follow-up to one of the most linear Zelda games possible, and made it the exact opposite. An open-world game that you can do whatever you want in. Any kind of player can play this game, and literally the only mandated thing you have to do is beat the tutorial. Then you can waltz straight up to Ganon while screaming, "Sup, bitch!" One of my favorite things about this game is how it handles combat. Here's a great example of an encounter. In the Great Plateau, there are 2 bokoblins just kinda chilling with their meat. You have 3 options. You can, 1, just ignore them. It's the simplest solution, but also the least fun. You can also just waltz down there and start wailing on them, or shooting them with your bow. We'll call this the direct path. But in option 3, you notice the bombs around their camp, and then you see the boulder. I think you know where this is going. But seriously, look at the amount of strategy that you could have for this one enemy interaction. This is a part of the reason why Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. It's because if you really think about it, this game is just a stealth game. Almost every encounter has something you can do, such as throwing a bomb to break enemies up a little, or stealing all their weapons before they even notice you, and so many other things. Now, of course, this can lead to a lot of cheesing. I mean, look at the way I beat a shrine. Everyone has some story about how they cheated the engine in Breath of the Wild, but I kinda think that's where the fun is. There's no solution, so make your own, buddy, and it's kinda neat that a game can do that. Now, while playstyles are one method to video games staying open to multiple audiences, I do think there is one far more common way. Difficulty modes are a staple in gaming. They're so well used, they were probably the first thing you thought of when I asked this question. No wait, the other one. The concept of difficulty modes is fairly simple. Have a set number of presets that alter anything to make the game easier or harder. Typically, this is done through enemy health. I don't like the implications of that difficulty name. One of the best examples of the way difficulty options are normally handled is...
The current route is no longer available. Alternate route found. Turn left.
The Dead Seat is a FNAF-like game where you need to get enough gas for your car to drive away by looking down at your DS. But you need to keep looking up to stop monsters, among other things. For those who weren't following the development of this game, a streamer known as AstralSpiff decided to play the game, and called it way too easy. The development team decided to not take this lying down, and took the game's mechanics and created a bunch of presets that ramped the gameplay up significantly. You could also customize things however you wanted. the difficulty was completely up to the player's hands and allowed the game to be accessible to a lot more people. This, in my opinion, is a standard way difficulty is handled. Not completely, obviously, as this clearly had some work thrown in it by allowing the player to customize things to whatever they wanted. Plus, the game had some new mechanics specifically for this update that could only be used in the custom mode. While this is one way difficulty is tackled, we still do have quite a few other examples to get through. Super Mario Odyssey is an amazing game. I know it, you know it, I feel like it's a pretty uncontroversial take. On top of bringing back classic 3D Mario sandbox areas, it also gave some of the best feeling controls ever seen in the series. Like, seriously, just look at him go! Mario schmoves in this game. So Mario Odyssey does have difficulty modes, but it's nothing like the Dead Seat. Instead, you have a regular mode, which is the recommended way to play this game, but for any less skilled players in the room, there's Assist Mode. Assist Mode modifies the game in a couple of small changes that leave a massive impact.
Did you say massive?
No! We can't do memes. Now this video isn't gonna age well.
Oh, sorry, man. Didn't mean to.
Whatever, it's fine. Anyways, as I was saying, Assist Mode massively changes things for younger players. Why are you still here?
You know, I don't really know.
Could you just, like, I don't know, go over there? Assist Mode massively changes things for younger players. To begin with, Assist Mode doubles your health. Nothing major, mostly just here to prevent frustrating accidental deaths. However, if you stand still, you'll then begin to heal up, so you shouldn't ever really die. Finally, falling doesn't kill you. Instead, you are taken by the Bubble Lords to the last solid piece of ground. I guess also there's now GPS routing to the next location via these arrows, but that matters less in my opinion, though it's probably useful to some. Mario Odyssey was a game commonly criticized for its lack of difficulty, and so while an easier option is great, this fails to give something for those who want a challenge. Or does it? Put a pin in it for now, because instead, we're talking about Minecraft. But I think a change of setting is in order for that. There we go, much better. So, Minecraft. Quite obviously, it's one of the best-selling video games in the world, and is also a game I'm sure you're wondering why I haven't brought up yet. Because I'm not sure if you noticed, but it completely answers my question I've been talking about the entire video. Minecraft is a sandbox game. You can literally do anything. People have made computers in the game simply with redstone and powers beyond my comprehension. People host 1,000 people's civilizations in this game as social experiments. It's like Green Lantern if he had an imagination. You can do anything. So, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, why haven't I brought this game up until now? Well, I believe the answer lies beyond this door. And so, gentlemen and ladies of the audience, prepare as I open it. Okay, seriously this time. Live studio audience, are you ready? Great! Let's reveal what's behind that door. Yes, obviously Minecraft is the perfect answer to this question, but that's boring. The whole reason I like game design is because you can give 1,000 people the same problem and you get 500 different solutions to that problem. It's fun, it's interesting to analyze. Minecraft, however, allows you to do anything you want, so I only chose to give it this section in the video to explain why I wasn't talking about it, or other similar sandbox games. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah! Difficulty. While I'm not talking about Minecraft as a whole, as explained a moment ago, I still want to talk about the difficulty options. Sure, there's easy, normal, and hard mode, and these are all great for standard gameplay, but there's 3 other modes I want to talk about. Creative mode is obviously the most well-known. You can now fly around, you're impervious to all damage, and able to place any block. Adventure mode removes the survival aspect of the game, as now you don't lose any hunger. You also can't break any blocks though. Finally, there's peaceful mode, which removes all hostile mobs, basically removing most of the danger, as long as you know how not to fall, or stay out of lava. Fortunately, I do know how to do that. What's cool about these difficulty options is that even if you had no clue what a Minecraft is, if I just described these modes to you, you'd probably be thinking, wow, this game sure has a lot of ways to play it. Literally anyone can play Minecraft because of how well it's designed, but these extra difficulty options add an entire new layer of freedom to players that truly lets Minecraft be theirs. That's the point of the question here. How can I make a game my game? Sure, I didn't develop it. Hell, I probably couldn't even tell you what engine it was programmed in. But the experience I'm having, the way I'm playing it, no one else can tell me they had an identical experience. Okay, so I know I've talked about games everyone knows and loves, but this game has often flown under the radar, and it's been out since 2012, and it has one of the coolest ideas I think I've ever seen. Alright, did I get everyone's attention? Great. Kid Icarus Uprising is an on-rail shooter developed by my GOAT, Masahiro Sakurai. I love this man. He's epic. He even ran his own YouTube channel for a while where he talked about this mechanic, and it's how I even learned it existed. And then he talked through all the pros and cons of the mechanic, because he will talk about the flaws in his own system publicly, like the hero he is. Get it? Anyways, this mechanic is called the Fiend's Cauldron. The idea is fairly simple. Hearts are your primary currency in this game, and you give this thing hearts. The more hearts you dump in, the harder you make the game. But you do get better rewards if you can make it through with more hearts in. However, if you die, the game makes you play with an easier difficulty and you lose the extra hearts you put in. It's a real risk and reward situation, especially considering those hearts could go somewhere else like buying weapons from the black market. But what about if the level is already too hard? Well then, you can pay hearts to make it easier. Setting it 0 makes you basically immortal, which means you can get through that difficult segment. There also will typically be optional challenges called intensity gates. These gates will only let you through if you pass a certain intensity threshold. Then, a door will open and you can get some extra loot and stuff. I don't get why, as a society, we don't talk more about this mechanic, as it's so cool. Risk and reward becomes the forefront of your choice at the beginning of any level. And now, there's reasons to play at higher difficulties instead of just because I want my games hard. Take me, for example. I suck at video games, and while I won't ever go for the easy mode unless I absolutely have to, I'm not one to just choose the hardest difficulty out there. But give me a system like this, and I have a fucking Jimmy Neutron Brain Blast neuron activation. I now need to play at a higher difficulty, and I need those better items. We've spent a lot of time talking about really unique design ideas, but there are some other solutions, specifically for players who want a challenge. Remember that pin I put up here? Yeah, let's go ahead and grab it. Minecraft also has a hardcore mode. The idea is when you die forever. Run is over. Death equals delete. Minecraft isn't the only game that does this, however. Hollow Knight, as if it didn't need more challenge, offers Steel Soul mode, which is just hardcore mode again. Originally, Fire Emblem had this mechanic as a core design philosophy. If any of your teammates die, they are dead forever. Though, then they changed it in Awakening to make it so other players could simply turn it off. I mean, they made the series more accessible to people, so I'd call it a win. But all this leads me to Another Crab's Treasure. Another Crab's Treasure was developed by Aggro Crab Games. Yep, before they were making Peak, they were making Peak. This game is a Souls-like that follows Krill, a hermit crab who just wants a shell. We all know Souls games are known for not being super player friendly, but Another Crab's Treasure changes this because of this beautiful menu right here. I love it when a game has options rather than just a simple difficulty selection. And if you don't want to think about it, then there's presets here too. There's features that range from useful, such as no longer letting you lose all your money when you die, to things that would literally break the game. Hey, Krill, is that boss giving you trouble? Well then here, my friend.
Destroy.
Due to all of these assist options, Another Crab's Treasure is my recommendation for anyone wanting to get into the Souls genre, as I think these options make it a very forgiving game. And don't worry, there's still plenty of challenge for those who don't want to utilize these options. You know, why can't all games simply do things like this? Why can't we, the players, always play a game however we want? Throw in more options. We, as consumers, demand control over the games we play. Who's with me? Okay, so I might have gone a little bit overboard there. I think we as consumers get caught in this headspace that we are all that matters when it comes to video games. After all, we're the ones playing it. Why shouldn't we be empowered to make whatever decisions we want? Well, there's another party I failed to discuss until now. The developers. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but video games are fucking hard to make. When you first learn how to program, everything seems easy, but the further along you stumble and the bigger the project you create, you realize that the code just kinda does whatever the hell it feels like. And yet, for some reason, there are crazy people out here who still love creating video games. That is why this question is so difficult. Because consumers aren't the only part of the equation. The developers still have to make the game. But wait, I hear you saying, isn't this different from the question you keep referencing? And yes, attentive viewer, it is. I spent most of the video so far explaining how games can be more accessible to players. However, we're completely missing the point. It's a lot like this burger. Say that Gordon Ramsay cooked this burger at Hell's Kitchen for you to eat. Would you not say it would be a bit rude, maybe even insulting to pour salt on this burger or spray a bit of lemon juice you had in your pocket for some reason? I know if I spent decades of my life mastering this craft, I would certainly be pissed off. At the end of the day, you may know what you like, but you've got to trust the chef sometimes. Expand your horizons. If you don't like it, don't order the burger next time. Or maybe go to a different restaurant where the chef is cool with you messing with the burger. To give an example, back in 2017, IGN did an interview with Chad and Jared Moldenhauer, the co-creators of Cuphead.
Part of it was like trying to adjust something down to a person who's never played a game was, to me, no longer fun. I also personally believe like the idea of difficulty is like just a loose concept. It's every gamer has a different line for what that is, yet every gamer gets some sense of satisfaction of overcoming something.
Yes.
So there's a whole broad spectrum of gamers, and to get that feeling for like or people like us or our friends group, it needs to match sort of the way we had it, which was why we're like, if we're still having fun, and we've been working on this long enough, and if I still don't like hate the hell out of this boss, if I can actually play it and be like, all right, I'm like, it must be decent for people like us.
If a developer doesn't want to make a thing, typically it's due to their lack of interest, and if you force a developer to make something that doesn't interest them, then the game generally turns out worse. In the Cuphead developers' case, making a game for everyone meant they were making a game for no one. Whiplash is one of my favorite movies of all time, and no, not just because I like jazz. I find the story gripping, and there's such a tension you experience as you watch J.K. Simmons completely and utterly destroy Neiman. The climax is one of the best things to happen in cinema. Whiplash shows the horrors of abuse in such a clear way, and shows how there are no winners. However, this movie is completely brutal to watch. Damien Chazelle, the director of the film, loves showing Neiman playing till his hands bleed. I think he's turned on by it. Neiman literally gets hit by a fucking truck, and you watch as he falls apart in real time. This movie is not easy to watch, and things like
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference!
push this unsettling nature of the film even further. This is my mom. My mom does not like watching movies with lots of blood in it. There are lots of people in the world like my mom. However, Whiplash tells an important story about how easy one can fall into a cycle of abuse. And so, should the movie remove its blood so I can get my mom to watch it? I, at least, don't think so. Part of the reason the movie works so well is because of the hard-to-watch parts. Am I uncomfortable when watching the movie? Hell yeah. It's not like I'm enjoying watching these characters suffer, like Marvel editorial in any Spider-Man comic. Instead, I'm sitting through these scenes because they push the message the director is trying to tell us. Getting rid of the blood, or how far Fletcher is willing to go to break Neiman, or anything that could be a deal breaker to some viewers, quite literally waters down the message. and Damien is trying to show how easily one can get trapped in a cycle, harming themselves or others for one's approval. Developers do things for a reason. If they decide to take away different ways for players to play their game, it's not just because fuck you, it's because there's a specific reason they wanted you to play the game this way. They don't care if some people aren't pleased with it, because you can never please everyone, so why try if you're attempting to share a message? Typically, this is the point where people bring up Dark Souls. The game is hard, and it often feels like a fuck you to traditional game design and standard quality of life features. But I think it's existed long enough where people understand it now. Souls games have found their place in the world. People understand what their purpose is. However, there's another genre that exists that still pisses people off to this day. In fact, their entire point is to make people go, before you watch this video, I'm sure you all looked at my resume, right? Wait, you didn't? Oh, well, here, take a look right now. Do you notice how it doesn't say game developer on there? Well, this next section is about to dig into some deep theoretical design questions, and so I figured the only way forward is to have a game developer help out. This is Lespick. They were the designer and programmer on a game called PULLYWOG, one of the games that won Ludwig's first game jam. Since then, they've been at work on a Steam port for PULLYWOG with new levels and a completely different art style. Throughout this interview, I got some great life advice.
There's something fun about burning yourself out that much, because like when you're that burnt out, it kind of loops around and it's kind of nice. It's like when you're sick and then like everyone pampers you and like you can just rest. Like you're so burnt out, you know you can't be productive, so you actually rest, and it feels pretty good.
In regards to PULLYWOG and everything you're designing, how does one like even approach the question of difficulty in a rage game?
Okay, so I like to think of it with lenses. There's a book called The Art of Game Design that I think really does a good job of this. So when it comes to difficulty, one way I like to view it is like through a spectrum, and you have players across the entire spectrum, right? So the higher the difficulty, the more you narrow the kind of field of players that want to play, that will enjoy your game and will push through the difficulty. The more narrow, the worse in general. But in exchange, you get to push difficulty, and playing at a higher level of play is just like intrinsically fun.
The point of rage games is to piss people off. I mean, look at Jump King. This game is controlled entirely by how long you hold down the space key. You have no visual indication, you just simply have to jump off a feeling.
And do I know I can make the jumps in Jump King?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger? Can't stop me now!
However, the controls are actually really well made. The problem is, it's just not what we're traditionally used to. Rage games aren't actually that hard. Rather, they say they're hard and do things to modify how the player feels.
How difficult people perceive your game to be is entirely separate from how actually difficult your game is, right? So the best example off the top of my head is dying. People think, oh, Dark Souls is so hard, hardest game in existence, and that's fair, it is. But the idea is that in the Sonic games, the time, if we're talking about like actual punishment, like time wasted when you lose, there's a few Sonic games where the punishment is higher in those games than it is in Dark Souls. And it is worse, but it's not perceived as worse. In Dark Souls, you fall down and like there's that giant, you fucking died, you suck ass, dude. Whereas in the other games, they try to get you back into the game relatively faster. But the point of rage games, or what really sells the rage aesthetic, is just quadrupling down on making the game feel harder than it actually is. So back on like Jump King, right? So how they crank the perception is that you, instead of like you lose and you teleport back, you fall and lose progress, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, most jumps you can do with a success rate of like 90%. Like the overwhelming majority of jumps in Jump King are like pretty easy. And the idea is that when you fall, the time it takes to get back to the hard jump is typically only like 30 seconds. But like perception-wise, losing progress and having to redo it feels way worse than Celeste, screen wipe, teleport back, right?
So I'm sure it makes sense why rage games don't necessarily have any difficulty options, but even if they weren't trying to piss you off, there is another reason why. How do we even make a rage game easier? Well, you'd have to modify the platforming. That's easy, right? Imagine this. In PULLYWOG 2, Frog Harder, the sequel I just made up, the frog here needs to get his AMD Ryzen 7 1700 CPU. Why he needs it? I don't know. Its specs are dog shit. Anyway, he does his platforming challenge. I mean, look at him go. And look, he got the CPU. But now imagine what would have to be done to make it easier, or harder. You'd have to take this well-balanced platforming challenge and do it again. How does that sound? Oh, game developers, don't you want to do this?
No!
Of course, no one in their right mind would actually want to do this. The crazy thing is, though, there actually is a game that does this. Will You Snail is a solo-developed indie game by Jonas Tyroller. The game is a bunch of platforming challenges that are legitimately difficult. Sorry for the bad platforming you're watching right now, by the way. But on top of that, this AI by the name of Squid is spending the entire time trying to predict where you, the player, is gonna land. The game has so many enjoyable mechanics and is fairly short, but what's coolest about this game is that Squid will change your difficulty literally just to troll you and keep you challenged.
I just reduced the game difficulty so we can move on at some point. Perhaps extremely easy will be a bit more fun for the both of us.
Basically, every room is a different level between difficulties. Sure, the layout and mechanics are the same, but man, does it feel completely different. So, I think I've slightly failed when it comes to this video essay. I began writing this as a fun exploration of the ways different games let players interact with them. However, as I've gone further down the rabbit hole, there continues to be one ever-present fact, and it's driving me insane. When should a video game cater to the player's preferences? Well, there's two sides to this. Side one believes that video games are a product that you buy, and you as a consumer should have control over how and what you do with that media. Side 2 believes that video games are an art and that the developer's vision is paramount. You wanna know the fun part though? It doesn't even matter where you fall on the spectrum, because you're right! How the fuck am I supposed to get an answer out of this debate? I'm literally sitting here discussing an unanswerable question because these two sides are at odds with each other. You know what? That's it. I quit. Video's over. I'm going to bed. Hey, what's that light? It's so bright. It's Deltarune! Of course, the answer to everything! If you spend even 10 seconds on game design YouTube, you'll see that the answer to literally everything is, well, you need a little bit of both. And this video is no different.
Every discussion will end with "it depends," and they're not wrong. You can say "it depends" to fucking anything, and you're gonna be kind of right every single time. It's so annoying.
Oh, hopefully they're not too mad at me. But anyways, this is where Deltarune comes in. I suck at video games. This is an objective fact at life. I suck even more at bullet hells. However, I did not die once in Deltarune. Well, that is in the main game. See, there's a reason Deltarune is the answer to this debate, and that's because it forms a great compromise. Toby has set the game up for the player to play the way he wants it played, which is typically fairly easy as he wants more people to enjoy his game. However, he has added something entirely optional for those who want a challenge, the secret bosses. Each chapter has an optional fight that the player can take extra steps in order to fight. And compared to the rest of the game, these fights can be difficult, grueling even. I somehow beat the Knight, which is the hardest fight in the game, and it's like my favorite achievement ever. This is a trend a lot of games have hopped on. Make a game anyone can play, and then add an extra difficult post-game with hard challenges. Remember Mario Odyssey and that pin I told you to keep up? Well, let's pull it down now. After you beat the main story, all these extra pipes appear, which can offer really hard, demanding challenges. And then, if you get all the moons, you have to do the hardest platforming challenge in the game. Mario games have been doing this almost since their conception, although it's typically done through collecting star coins rather than getting all of the 900 or something collectibles. Ultimately, the beauty of video games is the fact that there are always going to be problems. What's amazing, however, is that 2 different developers will see this problem and come up with 2 completely different solutions. While there isn't necessarily an objective answer to how much a game should cater to the player, I hope I've shown you today how many different and creative ways designers respond to this question. Well, I think I've yapped long enough. I'm Case, and thank you for... Oh, hey, a note. It says, please wishlist PULLYWOG on Steam. Link in description. Well, you heard the slip of paper. Go do it. Anyways, I'm Case. This was my maze. Thank you for watching.